Welcome, everyone. We look forward to our last webinar of the season with Michael Rothberg. Those of you who've joined us before, you know the drill. There'll be just a few minutes now while the audience joins. So we're just waiting to get people in the webinar, and then we will be getting started. I'll make a few housekeeping announcements just as we get started. And one of my housekeeping announcements is that no raised hands will be called on. We will take Q&A at the end through the Q&A, and that's the only way to pose questions. I will be announcing that once we get more people in. So we're just waiting while the audience joins now. Thank you, everyone who is joining us today. We're just waiting for more of the audience members to join us. Welcome, everyone. We still see people joining. So let's get started. Welcome, everyone. On behalf of the New England Rug Society, this is our last webinar of this webinar season. We will be taking a break. The New England Rug Society has some in-person meetings planned, but for webinars, we will take the next few months off and we will resume in the fall. So Julia Bailey and I very much look forward to bringing you more webinars starting in the fall. Thank you for joining us today. We have, as always, many people from all over the world, and we're thrilled to have you. A few housekeeping things to note. Our speaker will take around 50 minutes today, Michael Rothberg. After his presentation, he will take questions. The way to ask questions is to type them into the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. I will be moderating the questions after our speaker is done with his presentation, and I will pose questions to our speaker. Questions will not be taken from chat, and any raised hands will be ignored. So the one way to pose a question is through Q&A. If you have a technical question or issue, please try to send me an email. I'll do my best. Yes, that would be the best way to communicate. So unfortunately, Julia Bailey, who does all of our introductions and is a wonderful scholar, is having some technical issues. And so I will be introducing Michael Rothberg. Michael has a long history of collecting Oriental rugs and textiles. He has spoken and mounted exhibitions at many rug conferences. Last year, he published a wonderful book called Nomadic Visions. I'm going to hold it up so all of you can see it. It's really a beautiful book and available from HALI publications. And today he's going to be showing us saddlebags from his book, as well as many from his own collection that are in that book. He'll zero in on certain design motifs and compare them. And I hope you enjoy the beautiful weavings he shows and his webinar. So from wherever you are, we welcome you to listen to Michael Rothberg. Michael, time for your presentation. and over to you.
Well, greetings to everybody from Northern California. It's great to be with you. I'm looking forward to sharing these images with everybody. I certainly want to thank Jean and Julia for their invaluable assistance with this presentation. And thanks for mentioning my book. In that regard, I would like to offer special thanks to Bruce Begans and Mike Chabul and the Near Eastern Art Research Center, which made it possible for the book to be published. Today's focus is going to be on design motifs in Persian and Caucasian saddlebags. All of the pieces were made in the 19th century, and for that reason, we're referring to the bags from Persia as Persian and not Iranian, because the modern state of Iran didn't come into being until 1935. These bags embody a rich repertoire of symbols, the original meaning of which will likely never be known. In addition to saddlebags, which is an overall description, we'll also be looking at saddle blankets for horses, small personal bags, and one salt bag. There are many different sizes that these bags come in, and we'll be discussing that. All the pieces are from my collection, unless otherwise noted. Video. Okay. All the bags that we're seeing were made originally in pairs. So this is a complete set of saddlebags. These are referred to in Persian as horjin. They were, if you look at just one half, they are typically about 2 feet square or 60 centimeters. The small personal bags are half that size. And then there are larger juval bags that were made for camels and horses. All the bags are composed of 100% wool, although the foundations might include silk or cotton or camel hair. All the dyes are natural dyes. And I should mention that the pieces we're talking about are all in the pile technique, as in normal carpets, and not in the sumac or flat woven technique. These bags were used for transport as containers. But in addition to that, they also represented the tribal identity. They represented the prestige of the weaver and the family. They represented a store of value in case of hard times when they might need to be sold or bartered. And they also could offer protection through their symbols and the use of magic motifs. This is a look at a lovely bag from the Luri tribe. But in this instance, I want to show you the back. The back is usually flat woven, as this is. And in the south of Persia, particularly, these back sides were often quite elaborate and colorful. So this is the area we'll be looking at today. We're going to be starting in the south, in the area where this is not actually Baluchistan, but it's Baluch. And we'll be looking at Kerman province and Fars province, home to the Luri, Khamseh, Afshar, and Qashqa'i tribes. We'll be looking at this area, which is along the Zagros mountain range where the Kurds reside, all the way up here. And we'll be looking at Azerbaijan. This is Persian Azerbaijan, and this is Caucasian Azerbaijan. I'm sorry it's not shown on the map, but the river Aras right here is the boundary, and all of this area was Persian during the time these bags were woven. The Russians came in the second half of the 19th century, but the nomads still continued to migrate over the Aras River back and forth between these two areas. Here's a topographical map to give you an idea of the mountain terrain all along the west side of Persia. The tribes inhabited this whole area. This is the Zagros range. This is the Elburz mountain range. Here's a lovely girl from the Qashqa'i tribe. And we can see that she's sitting on a lovely white horse. And here are the bags that are carrying her belongings. At a young age, the girls were taught by their mothers to spin and dye the wool. Here's an example of dyed wool in the red color that came from the madder plant. Now we see all of these Qashqai on their way on migration. And it was typical for the tribes to spend the summer months in the high mountain range areas and to come back down in the winter on the lower slopes where it was warmer. We can see they're carrying all their bags with them. And I should mention that these bags were used on donkeys and mules and horses and camels. We see here mostly donkeys. So there are many different formats in these bags, and here are a few of them. On the lower left, we can see a bag face with a central medallion motif. In the upper left, we see a hexagonal lattice design. On the right, we see an overall pattern that is actually borrowed from Oriental carpets called the Herati motif, and this tribeswoman has interpreted this in a very unique way. And on the lower right, we have an all-over collection of octagons in the field. 4 very unique bags. So I mentioned there are various formats. In the upper left, you can see a schematic drawing, which broken down shows all the geometric possibilities that the weaver can deal with. We can see that this can be divided into squares. It can be divided into diagonal diamonds pattern. It can be divided into small triangles. And I happen to come across a bag face below it that is composed completely of small triangles. So the weaver in this instance is relying on color variation to give the aesthetic effect. But you can see here, this is a sextagon. You can see there are different shapes that can be seen. Here's a diamond. You can see anything you want in all of these geometrical lines. The upper right is another example of the Haredi motif. In this case, this is a shoulder bag, and the woman decided just to use one motif, one of the central motifs, just one single one for the whole bag. And on the lower right, we see this once in a while. This is a bag face in which the weaver has utilized border designs from Oriental rugs, fashioned in a diagonal pattern to fill the entire field. So another example of borrowing from an Oriental rug is this Afshar double bag set. On the right, we have a carpet from the late 18th, early 19th century in the Textile Museum. And on the left, we see the weaver in the second half of the 19th century has copied this medallion, even to the point where the color of the rosette is also in red. So we're going to be looking at a number of different categories. Some will be figurative and some will be more schematic, more geometric. So we're going to look at floral designs now. Here are two unique bags from the Luri tribe. The one on the left is from the Elmbik collection. Here the weaver has taken this floral motif and put it all around in the border. And on the lower right, we have an entire plant form that is quite unique. The salt bag on the upper left is Armenian from the Karabakh region in the Caucasus. We can see the field is filled with these small sprigs. The bag face on the right from the Kurdish tribe also has these small flowers in it. And I wanted to add a photo of the back of the salt bag because it is so colorful. From the Southern Caucasus, this unique bag has two different motifs. I've highlighted right here this floral motif, which has the three buds at the top. And this piece at the bottom is from southern Persia, completely different area, but follows the same drawing pattern as the one from the north. But I would mention that this design is usually used by the Kurds, and it was probably borrowed from the Kurdish tribe. To great effect, I think, very artistic examples. Here are a profusion of other floral motifs. I'll just let you look at these on your own. In this instance, a design is borrowed from an old Caucasian carpet from the 18th century. This figure represents a lotus palmette. And this is featured on a simple bag face taken from this whole carpet. So the most popular design in the fields of Oriental rugs are rosettes. Rosette is the term that applies to a floral form seen from the perspective as if you were looking down on it. This is what I mean. Here are four examples. They're typified by this rounded form forming a heart shape in each of the quadrants. Three of these were from South Persia, and the one on the lower right is from the Caucasus. So this was common to all the areas of Persia and the Caucasus. Going back in time, on the left, we see two 15th to 16th century Anatolian carpets from the Vakaflar Museum in Istanbul. And again, they're using this identical rosette. And I was happy to come across an illustration of the rug on the right from the Kirchheim collection from the 16th century, in which the rosette was used to fill the entire field of the rug. Very colorful example. This is a variation of the rosette in which, instead of being rounded, all of the corners are squared off. But this is the same design. This one and the one are both from Persian Azerbaijan, typically used in the corners with the medallions. I've seen many bags with that design. And here's an example from the 17th century from an old Anatolian carpet in which this exact motif is found in the border. So there's a long tradition of using this style of rosette. Going further back in time, on the left is a detail from a Turkish Seljuk carpet dating to the 13th century. Again, we have the same motif. On the upper right, we see a detail from a carpet published by Gloria Ganek. This from a Chinese rug made by the Mangur tribe in Gansu province. This also dates to the 14th century, similar to the Turkish example. And going way back in time, this clay seal on the lower right, dating to 6000 BCE, was discovered by James Mellart in an excavation in Catalhuyuk in central Anatolia. Again, we see the outline of a very similar pattern. Now I want to mention there's another variation of the rosette, which is drawn instead of rounded parts at the top, we have points at each of the north, south, east, west directions. This is a highlight. This is one of my favorite bag faces. And here are three examples of Anatolian carpets from the 16th century, and all have this style of rosette with the points top, bottom, and each side. The botte motif is something that originated with cashmere shawls in India. That would have been derived from Mughal art and from their making of rose bouquets. It also derived from Persian silk art, and it's thought that the little curve to this botte figure at the top was derived from the cypress tree image. And there also may have been influences from European botanical illustrations, all in the 17th to 18th century. These details of cashmere shawls, better known as a paisley design in the West, were published by Frank Ames. We have a Southern Caucasian bag face in the upper left, which we saw before, in which the botte motif is used on one of the rows. And you can see there's a floral component to it, as with this piece down here. Here are three bag faces from the Afshar tribe in southern Persia. And I've highlighted two of the botte figures so you can see how different these tribal interpretations can be. In both cases, these are beautifully drawn and very clear. The top two examples, also all of these three from southern Persia, where the bota was used almost the only place in Persia they were used is in southern Persia. We see the bota in completely different forms, covering the fields of the top two bags. And on the bottom, we have yet another original Luri interpretation from the Patrick Pooler collection. So now we'll look at some motifs that are not figural. This is one of the most well-known types of Persian saddlebags. This is from the Kurdish tribe, the subtribe of the Jaff. And as you see, the field is composed entirely of these hooked diamond motifs. I want to point out the weaver has very carefully changed color in 3 of these diamonds to enhance the aesthetic effect. That's known as the abrash technique in Oriental rugs. I think it's a very beautiful example. This is detail from the same bag. In this case, we have a Kurdish bag face in which the weaver has used this hooked diamond motif as a medallion, a single medallion, instead of having lots of small ones. On the lower left, we saw this bag earlier as a double set. The Qashqa'i tribe has copied this motif from the Kurds, but we rarely see that in Qashqa'i work. And most importantly, I want to point out this fragment from a Turkish Seljuk carpet dating to the 13th century. The drawing at the bottom is enhanced by Dr. Sorari Yetkin below to show what this design would have looked like if it were complete. And we can see that it matches almost completely the design in the Jaff bag. So the tradition is an extremely old one, although it's not certain whether it originated with the Turks or with the Kurds, who were in Persia long before the Turks. Here are 6 more examples of these hook motifs. James Opie, in his book on southern Persian rugs, speculated that these hooks represent animal heads or bird heads, and this would be the neck right here and right here. And I agree with his interpretation. And so I refer to these, as he does, as animal head medallions and not latch hook medallions. We have a Turkmen example from a tent band in the lower right-hand corner. The garden was a very important image in Persian art, in their miniature paintings, in their carpets, wherever they had artistic expression. Here's an example on the lower right of what's called a garden carpet from Northwest Persia. This dates to about the late 17th century. And we will see this entire carpet did represent a garden. Here's a floral form. This area represents a pool of water. But what I want to point out is the tree form here and here, which is surreptitiously reproduced in this saddlebag from the Khamseh Confederation in southern Persia. Right here we can see the outline of a tree or a plant and the flowers or leaves at the top and various symbols all through this bag face. This type of design, very crowded design, was common to the Khamseh Confederation, and they had a similar design called Go Farang in Persian, but it's different from this one. Those represented rose bouquets, and they made a number of carpets with this kind of crowded motif all over in the carpet. Here's another example of what I call a garden design. On the lower left is a complete saddle blanket from the same tribe, the Khamseh tribe. This would have gone over a horse, over the saddle, through here. And on the lower right, this is a detail of the saddle blanket in which we see a superfluity of chickens, these merg figures, and other birds, and all sorts of floral forms and rosettes. And a similar drawing can be seen in this very small personal bag in which we see floral forms, rosettes, and various birds and animals. Very unique small bag. The 8-pointed star is a favorite motif in Oriental rugs. In this Luri bag face, the weaver has used the 8-pointed star to fill the entire field in a lattice pattern, which we see goes on the diagonal, all red, all brown, all red. And here are two examples in which these 8-pointed stars were used in the center of a medallion on a saddlebag. Completely different drawings and coloration. We see an 8-pointed star used as a medallion. And again, this is the center of a Khamseh bag face. This was a favorite design for the Khamseh Confederation weavers, the Baharlu. And we see their counterparts in 16th century Turkish rugs. This one from a museum in Istanbul, and this example is from the Kirkheim collection. Going back in time again, we are in the Seljuk period of the 13th century. This is a Turkish rug that's in Istanbul, and we see a red 8-pointed star surrounded in light blue by another 8-pointed star. And we see the same in blue here. From roughly the same period, this is a tile from central Persia, from Kashan. And there are lots of these tiles. This is from the British Museum. Here are a couple examples from Moorish architecture from the south of Spain. We see the 8-pointed star here and in these tiles. And an older example of a Roman roundel done in the interlaced textile fashion. And this dates from the 4th to 5th century. This roundel is in the Textile Museum in Washington, D.C. Now we'll go back to look at some creatures. This is a unique Afshar bag on the upper left, and to the right, a detail. So you can see the peacocks. We're going to look at a group of peacock images. They're all different. The two in the center are from the Caucasus. And the two bag faces below are from a Baluch tribe. These are very popular with collectors. They refer to them as bird bags. And here we have a detail of the one on the right. Here are more examples. And below we have a tile from the British Museum, very elegant drawing of a peacock, and a completely different tribal interpretation on the right. I must mention this is in weft-wrapped sumac technique, not in pile. And this peacock reminds me of a medieval crest from Europe, but I don't know if they thought of it that way. Here are some random bird forms. I'll just let you look at these. And we'll look at some Turkic motifs. Oops, we went too far. We went too far, sorry. We lost it, there we go. This is one of my favorite bag faces. This was a fairly common pattern in the Caucasus. But we'll now look and see where this pattern derived from. On the right, this is a Kurdish rendition. Very beautiful bag, and very rare, I might add. This is a detail from that bag. And if you look closely, this motif is repeated exactly in the center of this device in a Salor Turkmen trapping from the 18th century. This pattern is known as the Aksu pattern. And if we go further back in time, the Seljuk fragment below was discovered by Karl Lamm in Cairo. These are considered the Fastat group of fragments. This dates to the 13th century. And this motif, this is the bare outlines of really the same motif with a square in the middle and the two prongs at the top and the bottom and each side in a repetitive pattern. So this is a very old motif. This is a symbol that is very familiar to collectors of Anatolian kilums and Turkmen weavings. We see an Anatolian kilum on the right, a fragment of one. And you can see it's the same shape. There were many, many hundreds of these made. Here's a detail that is similar to the one on the left. This is Shahsevan bag face. This is a Turkmen example from an old Chodor Juval. It's the same Kochak symbol. And if we turn this motif on its side, it would look like this from a Shahsevan bag face. I forgot to mention that these are thought to represent ram's horns, and I'm certain that they are meant to represent that. But this representation here, I believe, is representing two animals on either side of a tree of life. But of course, it's a very geometrical representation, so you'll have to take my word for it. This pattern right here, you can see all these examples are referred to as Memling gulls. The name came from the painter, the Dutch painter Hans Memling, who painted in the 15th century. He was very fond of painting Oriental rugs. And so he painted a lot of Oriental rugs that had this motif in them. And we will see on the lower right, this is an example from an old 16th century Anatolian rug. And there it is, the Memling that one of the types that he painted. So these are called Memling gulls. We have a beautiful Caucasian storage bag in the center. Lovely colors. And we have a Turkmen example I want to point out on the lower left from the Salor Turkmen tribe dating to the late 17th or 18th century. And all of these other examples come from various Persian bags or mats. And I'll just let you look at those for a minute. This is a bag face, a saddlebag actually. It has its back. It's complete from the Luri tribe. It's quite unique. I know of 4 or 5 other examples with this pattern. They're all similar to this with 3 rows of these zoomorphic creatures all along here. Strangely enough, the weaver has put the bottom row with these creatures upside down. I'd like to emphasize now the tails of some of these creatures. This is from the bag we just looked at. There's the tail. These creatures in this Shahsevan bag face have the same elaborate tail. On the lower left, we have an example of a Chinese rug from the 17th century from the Swan collection, in which we see a dragon with a very elaborate tail. And we have a 17th century Turkish rug, possibly an earlier rug with a dragon figure, again with a very elaborate drawing of the tail. So that was one of the stylistic favorites in Persia and in Anatolia. They were also fond of 2-headed creatures. Here's a detail from the bag on the left. And this is from the Caucasus on the lower left. And this is the Luri saddlebag we looked at before. And this is one of the creatures with 2 heads, which are represented by ram's horns. The 4-legged creatures are another variation of these zoomorphic forms. This on the upper left, this is from a very small shante, a woman's personal bag, which would have been used for her jewelry and other personal effects. I originally thought these were birds, but how could the birds have 4 legs? So very colorful feature. Somewhat similar in this piece from the Bakhtiari tribe in South Persia, another South Persian example from the Luri tribe. I'm sure this iconography is very old, as the Luri tribe was in that area. This was made for at least 800, 900 years before this bag face was made. We have an example on the lower left from an old Turkish rug. Again, with the 4 legs, 4 feet. Diamond shape, like we see above. And last but not least, an example from a Salor Turkmen door rug called an ensi. We see a parade of 4-legged creatures, and these also have 2 heads. So all of these images are most colorful. Here are just a couple other interesting animals. It's a goat on the left, which appears on the cover of my book. And this is an example of small animals that the weavers like to put in the background of their bags as filler elements, and I'm sure they were there for good luck. And you can see how colorful, 3 different colors they put these little animals in. On the lower left, this is a lion figure, which is very important in Persian art and Persian history, from the Khamseh saddlebag that we saw earlier. This is a detail, and this line in yellow that looks like the lion is spitting. I've interpreted this to mean that the weaver is trying to express pictographically the lion roaring. So I think that's supposed to express a lion roaring out. And here's a more classical drawing of a lion from a Baluch balisht. Sometimes quartets of animals are put inside of medallions. This is one of the most common type of Persian bags known. All collectors of Persian bags have at least one of these. All of the southern Persian tribes made these with the diamond medallion motif and these bird heads adorning the diamond. But we see inside these 4 animals. So I want to point out these analogies. We have a Salor Turk-Mongol fragment from the 18th century. We have the 4 animals inside the medallion, another Turkoman medallion from the Eagle group, Turkoman origination, 4 animals. I hope you can see them. And I was very happy to come across this 17th century carpet fragment in the Kirkheim collection, in which this is a carpet, not a bag face, but these 2 are in one half of this medallion, and the other half is in the rug with something in between. So there are 4 of these in that design as well. So this design has a very long history. Here's an example of a cruciform motif. These crosses are contained in hexagons filling the entire field. In this instance, the weaver has relied on color variations for her aesthetic effect. I think she's done a beautiful job with the color variations. Again, we see the cruciform motif filling the field in a series of octagons. And the cruciform motif was used in a variety of ways, and I'll let you look at these other examples. I couldn't help but put in this beautiful battle scene from Rashid al-Din's chronicles dating to the 14th century. This is a Mongol shield, and Harold Boehmer speculated that this represented the 4 winds, but in any case, we can be sure that at least it represented the 4 cardinal directions, east, west, north, and south, and I'm sure it symbolized many other things. Very old symbolization. Here we have a gorgeous Shahsevan bag face with the crosses in an overall pattern, and a very similar schematic from this 17th century Anatolian rug in Istanbul. And we see the diamonds on the diagonal with the cruciform motifs a little more elaborate inside of each diamond. This is a subgroup of the Luri tribe that always put these cruciform motifs in the corner with their medallions, and always in this gold color. This is the same motif, and I'll let you look at all the different variations. You can see they're all drawn in a similar manner. with this elaboration at each of the corners. This is an example from a Yoma Turkoman carpet, very popular motif with the Turkmen. But I'm excited to share with you this motif on the lower right, which is from a felt hanging in the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. This is from the Pazyryk tombs dating to the 4th century BCE, a Scythian tomb in which we see the pattern on this felt that is extremely close to what we see in these 19th century bag faces. So this isn't just an old design, it's an ancient design. These two bags have similar medallions, very beautiful bags, but I want to point out the border motif. I'm highlighting it up in the upper right because it corresponds to this 13th century Seljuk fragment, Turkish fragment in the Afshar collection, in which this motif is seen exactly as we see it in this 19th century bag face, both of these bag faces. If we take the cross motif and turn it on its side, it becomes an X. Here we have an unusual drawing of this. Sometimes we see it in carpets from the Kurdish tribe. And this bag face is from the Caucasus, the Karabakh region. And on the right, it is seen almost exactly the same in a 17th century Turkish rug in the Vakaflar Museum in Istanbul. So again, this design migrated several hundred years down to the 19th century and was borrowed by this weaver. Last, we have lots of these amulet figures. This is from a Talish bag face in the Caucasus, but this type of amulet was used all over Persia for good luck and protection. Here we see a piece of Turkmen jewelry. That's exactly what that's meant to represent. And this detail from a Kurdish juval, I found reflects the British flag known as the Union Jack. How did they come up with that design? We do know the British were very well represented in Persia at this time. So thank you very much. I also want to give special thanks to Dr. Alan Rothblatt for helping me assemble these slides.
And thank you, Michael. We enjoyed your presentation, and I hope you are ready to answer some questions because we do have quite a few for you. I'm going to relay them to you in no particular order. So starting with salt bags, have you ever found or been aware of someone finding remnants of actual salt in a salt bag?
I have not. As I point out in my book, I've never been to Persia or the Caucasus, and but people like Mike Chabul have been there, and John Wertheim has spent a lot of time in Persia, and I would imagine that they might have done so.
Okay, I'm going to try to whiz through these, and I'm going to try to send a virtual hook to you so that we can try to get numerous people's questions asked. Are there any special storage conditions for these beautiful bags? How do you store them?
Well, the main danger is moths. and they should be protected from moths. Um, you can put them in mothballs and spray them, but you can probably get cancer from doing that. But no, they need to be kept away from moths. They can be they can be wrapped in cotton or perhaps in plastic bags, which I'm now doing in with my rugs. And if they get moths in them, the best way to eliminate the moths is to, first of all, thoroughly vacuum and clean them, and if possible, put them in a commercial freezer for.
Okay, moving on quickly. Have you ever seen signed or dated bags?
Have I ever seen signed or dated bags?
Signed or dated bags?
Definitely. In my book, I have several. There's one from the Caucasus and uh, well, anyway, yes, it's uncommon, but some of them are signed and dated. The Armenian bag has an inscription. The salt bag has an inscription, and so does the Baluch Balisht.
Question about dyes. The audience member describes an exquisite cornflower blue in so many of the bags. What is the source of that dye?
All of the blue dyes are from indigo, and that wasn't confined to Persia. It was also the dye of use in Indonesia and every place all over the world. It was very sought after and very effective.
Thank you. Question about bags being attached. And I think that the questioner means how were they used on the animal? And were they all saddlebags or storage bags? And could you describe their usage on an animal in just a little bit more detail, please?
Yes, the bag is made in twos, in pairs, and so it would have gone over the back of the animal, which each half on other sides, each side of the animal. The bags had a back and they were open at the top, and so objects could be placed in them, and then there were loops that could fasten the bags. However, when they were in the tent, the bags could be hung up for decorative purposes, and they could be stacked. They could also contain things while they were in the tent.
And how about the Qashqa'i bag faces in particular? You mentioned their soft wool, and someone refers to a handkerchief-like handle. And why do you think they were too delicate to be used as bags?
No, actually, I did want to point out that the dimension of wool is very important in these bags, and you can't tell from the pictures. Uh, these 19th century bags mostly had really fine wool. And I would say that the Qashqai bags typically are more finely woven than many of the bags, than most of them. But no, they're not at all delicate. They're very tough and durable fabrics. The pile is just a little shorter. And I would tell you it's a sheer delight to touch these bags.
And how about the use of, the audience member refers to commercial dyes, maybe we might say chemical dyes. When did those kinds of dyes come into wide use in the geographic area that you're addressing in your presentation?
They came into use in the last quarter of the 19th century. One or two of the bags in my book have a tiny amount of an early synthetic dye called fuchsine. But the azo dyes, the harsher orange dyes, and chemical dyes mostly came into being in the early 20th century. But a lot of these tribes people were on the move, far removed from the cities. And so their access to these dyes came rather late. And by the time they used these dyes, the art had already degenerated. And so we don't usually collect these bags.
You showed numerous bags from the Shahsevan. What are the distinctive characteristics of Shahsevan pile weaving in bags?
It'd be nice to do another webinar just on the Shahsevan.
Sounds like you could do one.
But as I point out in my book, they're very much misunderstood in the rug literature. And I divide them into two regional categories. Those from the Mogan Plain in the Caucasus and northern Azerbaijan usually have cotton wefts, and the ones from Persian Azerbaijan in the Khamseh region have red wool or pink wool wefts. But in terms of other characteristics, they're a Turkic tribe. The borders in the bags are almost always ivory borders. They use Turkic motifs frequently, and they're very well woven. The wool is superb from the Azerbaijan area, and I don't think we have time for a lot more detail.
Okay, well, the questioner can email you. It's very nice of you to put your email on the last slide.
I will say that an awful lot of bags that have been published called Shahsevan are not Shahsevan, including the piece that was on my title page, which is from Azerbaijan, but was sold at auction as Shahsevan.
Okay, just a couple more questions. What type of looms were used to weave these bags?
These were small horizontal looms, which would be laid on the ground, as opposed to vertical looms, which were upright, which were used in the workshops when the more commercial rugs were made. So these were portable, they were small, they could lay them on the ground. And when it was time to move on, they would pack them up, put them in one of the large bags. And that's what they traditionally used.
And Michael, do you have a favorite bag? I think you love them all, but do you have a favorite?
I thought that question might come my way. I could probably limit it down to about 15 favorites from all different regions. I don't. You know, I could say a first 5, a second 5, maybe. But I love bags that where the artistic conception is exciting and rare. You know.
Last question from me. We're both going to be at Rug Collectors Weekend soon, Santa Ynez, end of this month. And our last webinar presenter, Alan Rothblatt, is doing a presentation together with you, Michael. Will you be showing some of your bags at Rug Collectors Weekend?
Actually, unfortunately, I'll be showing in 3 different venues. I'll be showing some of my bags. Yes, I thought I would show one bag from each of my 10 chapters of my book. And I'll also be showing some Baluchi rugs and one other item, and a few Turkmen juvals with Dr. Rothblatt.
Can't wait to see you there. So on behalf of Julia Bailey and myself, the New England Rug Society, thank you, Michael, and thank you to our audience. We've enjoyed your presentation. This will be the last webinar for a while. We plan to resume in the fall, so please stay tuned. We look forward to more wonderful speakers and great presentations like today. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.